Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome in. We are just about to jump into Unit 2, Chapter 2, Section 1. We're going to start taking a look at economic systems. And I'm really excited to get into this. We're going to look at a lot of different economies around the world, and that's going to be our focal point for this second unit. So, let's take a look at how economic systems are defined. We have to ask ourselves three basic questions. We have to have a starting point to figure out how these economic systems are classified. The way that a nation determines how to use its resources to satisfy people's wants and needs is known as an economic system. Three basic questions are going to emerge. The first question that emerges are, what goods and services should be produced? Okay, so what goods and services for that particular area or nation should be produced? Second question, how should they be produced? So a question of how are they produced is number two. And then lastly, who should share in what is produced? So who gets what? And once we figure out these three questions, we can start to classify our economic systems. Okay, what should be produced? Because we live in a society that has scarcity and trade-offs, which we learned in Chapter 1, we need to determine what to produce. So remember, if more than one item is produced, then less of something else will be produced. So if you're producing a lot of one thing, you might not be producing as much of something else. A good example would be an auto manufacturer, okay, determining which type of vehicles they'll need to produce for a calendar year. So it's maybe like Ford. Okay, Ford is thinking about, hey, what we're going to roll out in 2021. So Ford is just trying to figure out, hey, are we going to go pickup trucks, SUVs, minivans, luxury vehicles, sedans? How are we going to lay it out? So now if we see more and more trucks and SUVs being produced by Ford, then what we're going to see likely is that a reduction in minivans, luxury vehicles, and sedans, okay? Now, 25 years ago, that may have been flipped. That might have been a little bit different, okay? So again, what should be produced? How should it be produced? Now, after deciding what to produce, an economic system must determine how those goods and services will be produced, okay? So our big question, hey, how many laborers need to be hired? How many folks do I need to have in the workforce? How many unskilled workers need to be hired? So people that don't necessarily have skills but can help produce the goods that we're looking for. What kind of capital goods will we need? What kind of machines? What kind of tools are we going to need to produce our main product? And what kind of technology is going to be introduced? Is it primitive? Is it highly advanced? What kind of technology is going to be included in the mix? And what kind of risk or trade-offs will be involved? So we're trying to figure out how to produce something for a society or a system, and we are involving risk and we are involving trade-offs, okay? Now, here's the last one. For whom should it be produced? So after goods and services are produced, the type of economic system that people live with will determine who gets the goods and the services. Who gets a new car? Who gets a new school? Who lives in new apartments? So some economies, some systems distribute goods via majority rule. So a majority of the population gets those goods distributed to them, whereas the minority part of that system does not necessarily get the goods, or they don't get the goods first, and they're usually second or third in line. There are other systems that use lottery systems. So you have a situation where you have a community and a lottery ball is drawn out, and that person or that individual gets whatever produced, whatever is produced to them. So that's a lottery system. First come, first serve basis, okay? It's a system where you show up first, you're waiting in line, and only the first 100 people are able to get that particular product. Well, if you are the first person, you qualify. If you're 101, if you're behind that first 100, you don't qualify necessarily. Okay, share equally, all right, equal distribution. So everyone, you have 8 people at a party or in a small group, every single person gets equal amount of goods, okay? Or we have seen situations where military force will dictate what products are distributed where. And that's typically what happens when we see a military coup and militaries taking over a particular government and therefore taking over the economic system that it's involved with. Now, let's take a look at some economic systems. There are 4 types, which we're going to get into, which I'm really excited to get into. So we're going to break these down. We're going to take a look at how they operate and how effective or ineffective they are. So there are 4 types of economic systems. They are traditional, command, market, and mixed. So with the traditional system, we're going to watch an example of all of these. In a traditional system, Okay? Economic decisions are passed on from other generations. Okay? This has a long lineage, a long history. Okay? If your father was a fisherman, you would become a fisherman. And then your son would become a fisherman, or your daughter would become a fisherman. It's just a cycle. It's a cycle that is continuous. Okay? Traditional economies are rooted with deep family community ties. Okay? Change is not welcome very often, though. So anything that comes from the outside, again, it kind of disrupts the system. It's not acknowledged, and it's hard to adapt to. Okay? Choices for consumer goods are rare. Okay? You essentially have, if you're living in the Arctic, you've got, whales, seals, fish. You have, caribou. You've only got a limited amount of resources that you can hunt or fish for. Okay? Things tend to stay the same. Examples, again, we're going to take a look at the Inuit of North America, the Mabuti of the Democratic Republic of the Congo, and the Aborigines in Australia. These are all really good examples of traditional economies. Now, a command system, a little bit different, okay? Like a traditional economy, individuals have little influence over decision making, okay? However, instead of tradition dictating the norms, a government is going to have control, and they're going to command the economy. They're going to orchestrate the economy. They're going to control imports, exports, what businesses can do, what businesses can't do. These decisions typically come from one leader or a small group of leaders or central planners. Okay, these people choose what is produced, what kind of career you're going to have. They're going to determine how much money you're going to make. There are no incentives, and choices are nearly impossible to make. Okay, you have a situation here where, again, it's strict, and you don't have really any options if you decide to open up your own shop or to try to implement capitalist tendencies. The command economy, that system is going to shut you down. Okay, so the best modern example of this, we're going to take a look at it today, is North Korea. Okay, also parts of China operate under these strict guidelines. Okay, now a market system. So the opposite of a pure command economy is a market system. In a market system, individuals like you and I own the factors of production, and we make economic decisions through free interaction, while looking out basically you're looking out for yourself, and you're looking out for your family's best interests. Okay, it is important to have choice. All right, flexibility, the option. I can go to the store and I can choose from 100 different types of cereals. I can go to a shoe store and get 100 different types of shoes. Choice and flexibility in an open market. Okay. Now, a market is the process of freely exchanging goods and services between buyers and sellers. Now, prices in markets will fluctuate based on transactions between buyers and sellers. If it's a high price, okay, something is going to become a little bit more scarce. If it's low price, there's going to be abundant amount of product. Okay. So the higher the price, the scarcer the product might be. So the flow of these resources, goods, services, and income in a market system is known as the circular flow of income and output. There's a really good graph, okay? As you take a look at this graph, all right, you have goods and services. They go into the individuals. The individuals provide their labor. That labor goes into the businesses. The businesses will transfer that income over to you. And what are you going to do? You're going to spend that income on other businesses. Again, a circular flow.